So it's a very interesting week. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was Jupiter opposing the sun directly at 22 and 22 degrees. The twos keep coming up this year, obviously, 2020. Every time we see these two alignments, we always end up talking about them, and it's really crazy. So now, what is Capricorn? What is Cancer? If you've been following the transits, we've talked about it a lot. The basics are the government structures or our legacies and our home life and our family life. So like how those things differ, the mom and like, you know, the president. So it's very different worlds. But okay, Jupiter opposing the sun. What I want to say is Jupiter is so close to Pluto, right? Because Pluto is at 23 degrees today. We still are in retrograde energy. Now, if you didn't know, Mercury retrograde ended. Hooray, thank God. Mercury retro ended. But guess what? The next day, Chiron went retrograde. So we are literally in still all of the retrograde energy. We just got this little bit of a break to process it in our mind. And now we're just going to experience it with our identity, which is Aries. Now, how does this relate to the Jupiter and Sun opposing each other exactly at 22 degrees? This whole thing is about a thought process dying. And it's some kind of thought process that ruled our comfort and gave us a lot of security. And we're coming to terms with this very radical thought process that's entering our brains now, whatever it is for you personally. It could be about family, relationships. It could be about who you want to be, changing your gender, who knows. It could be literally anything radical about that's going on in your thoughts, that now this retrograde allowed you to talk about it and bring it up and think about it more. And today, we're really seeing it die. So now, today, for this rest of the week, we're feeling this, whatever it was that we identified ourselves with, and Pluto's putting the end to it once and for all. Now, we're still in the retrograde energy, so it's not going to feel like the ending is happening now. But the ending actually is happening now. But we're going to feel like things are getting dragged. That's the whole point of retrograde energy. It just gets dragged on. So now, how does that relate to Chiron and Mars exactly conjunct in Aries today? Well, this is the thought process that this new one that we have fiddled around with in our brain, that we have thought about, you know, whether you want to do this crazy thing or not, or you want to live your life and be this new radical person, like I said, or whatever it is. Now Mars is finally like, no, yeah, we're going to do it. Like, we're all moving forward. Now, all of the cardinal energy, which is Cancer, Capricorn, and Aries, is being highlighted. Now, Libra doesn't have any planets there, but still the opposition is playing out with that as well. So the name of this week is to be our most independent selves. And what makes you, even if you're in a relationship, even if you are like in a job that you can't get out of, what can you do, or what are you doing to still feel and be independent from all of that collective like decision making going on? Because that is all of the things that are really changing in Capricorn. And so now we have our, like, today specifically, we're feeling and we're taking the movement forward. So even though we're in this middle of the retrograde, we do feel a little bit of the forward movement today. How do you feel about that? I want to know if that's like really what it is.
Well, I feel like, you know, we've been talking a lot about like karma and endings and death and structures falling and things changing. And I feel like the moment that we're in now is that moment where you're like, I'm trying to think of like, it's like a pregnancy analogy, but I like don't really know because I've never had a baby. But it's kind of like we're in that phase now where we know that there is this other future. So we're still kind of living in this present that is a reflection of the past.
Mhm.
And so it's about these like, it's like noticing in yourself the micro adjustments that you can make on the, like, in every moment on the day-to-day to go like, is that old thinking? Is that new thinking? And then other than that, we have 6 months of like, it's like, I feel like, I think about when Harry met Sally, you know, at the end of the movie, when he's like, when you realize that you want to spend the rest of your life with someone, you want the rest of your life to start right now. And I feel like that's like a nice thought, but actually I feel also like when you realize that the rest of your life is ahead of you, there's also this need to really savor the moment and enjoy the moment, because as we know, whenever anything either dies or is reborn, you take some, you leave some, you take the good, you leave the bad. So it's not that like you have to necessarily, you know, it's like in 6 months from now your life could look completely different. Like sure, that's possible, but there's a difference between what it would be like if you snapped your fingers and were there versus if you actually sort of sustainably and systemically and sort of slowly unwound or rewound or like adjusted, micro adjusted your behavior so that it wasn't like, you know, I feel like we're used to doing these sort of like highs and lows, and it's all really upsetting or it's really tragic or shocking and it's breaking news. I think that like right now we're feeling all of that like breaking energy and everything's breaking. And there's actually been so many things breaking that now everything's broken and we don't even know like what news even means anymore, right? Like there's all this like weird, so we want to snap our fingers and be in this future, but we can't even imagine that future. Really, we have to actually spend the next 6 months sort of feeling into and intuiting, because we haven't built a society in a feminine way yet, right? So this is our chance to go, okay, wait a second, would the feminine, yes, you can jump timelines, Jessica. This is so interesting given that I'm reopening my business and figuring out how to move forward, right? Okay, so it's like if you were like, okay, here's the new business model. It's like things are different I feel like every time we do one of these, I haven't talked to you for like a really long time. And it's just like things are happening so fast. And Mars and Mercury and Cancer. Right. Okay, so you're really feeling it. And you're really, this whole month for you, anywhere where Cancer is in your chart, you've had two major sort of deaths already. But as you know, when something even when like, you know, you had an animal die recently, it's like you have your animal die and then actually you kind of realize they're dying for a while, and then you move through that process with them, and then you spend time before you get a new dog or before you want actually like noticing what it feels like to not have them there and moving through that. And so you go slowly through these transitions. And so I think that's what the retrogrades have us do. And I feel like that's what this moment is, where it's like, okay, wait a second. You don't have to like bury the dog today. The dog's not dead yet, but it is like if you avoid, Jessica, remember when I thought that you like were pretending that I thought you left me for Julius to die when I dog sat for you, because I was like, wow, she doesn't want to face this reality. And it's like, no, that's my own shit. I'm like avoiding facing all my realities, right? You're like in Peru having an experience, but it's like the truth is that wasn't what was going to happen, but you were aware that he was getting older. And so when the time came, you weren't like, what? He's 15. I thought he had another 5 years. It's like, that would be insane, right? So it's like, yeah, of course I remember, right? It was like, you know, like lol September. But doesn't seem like years ago. What a journey. What a journey. Wow. But Julius was old when he was doing things, but he also like wasn't necessarily on his deathbed. Like I literally was like, is this dog gonna die on my watch? And you were like, no, he's just like really, really high. He's on tons of painkillers. He's just fucking cruising around the neighborhood. It's like, lol, got it. Totally different than but I jumped to the dog's about to die, right? And I had panic, and I was just literally trying to figure out how to communicate with you before the dog died that it died. But I was really I wasn't totally present. I should have just asked you what was going on, and then we both could have been more prepared. So really, I think that's the point. Like, we need to actually talk through the feelings and process the feelings. We've had a buildup of tons of shit happen, and then no real time to like actually process. And you know, we've been doing a lot of like whoa, like surfing, like whoa, what's been going on. We have not actually taken the time to like really shed the skin and really touch base with ourselves. I think that that's what this new moon
is. That makes perfect sense. It makes literal perfect sense, because all of that is still what we're going through right now, and especially coming up to this on the weekend, like seeing that Cancer energy circle back around, we keep circling back around it. So even though, and you're right? When you said pregnancy, what I was getting is that moment where you know you could be pregnant and you took a pregnancy test, but now you go to the doctor and you're like, well, do I have this baby or do I not have this baby? And like, this is that week where you're really thinking about that new life, whatever it is, and that new vision for, do you get a divorce? Do you not get a divorce? Is this something I should think about? Like, if I take that turn, is there a better face of business that I should do? And we're really going through this like washer and dryer of Cancer and all of the water feelings. Now we're sitting here like, okay, So yeah, do I have this baby or not? And we do have the next 6 months to have it, so we know we have time to prepare, but we still have to make a decision right now, because if we don't make that decision now, then we are still making a decision. We're stepping into that future. So you're either deciding to really be like, these things are going to change this week, and even if it's in a tiny way, it could, and that's why I'm saying with our thoughts, this is where Jupiter and the sun today are really bringing that thought process now to the surface for us because of the nodes still, and especially with Saturn at 29 and still kind of hitting that 28 degree of the node of the north node in Gemini too. So we still have like the feeling of the retrograding back into this strict period that we just like, okay, so now what, do I really take this leap or not? So we're not making the decision now, but Mars mistakenly can get us to have some conversations later this week that might not be progressive, because we do know that's what the Chiron and Mars is still saying. As much as Mars wants to go out, Chiron is checking Mars today and is like, no, keep it in. Keep it in, keep it quiet for a second, really sit with your feelings. So now that we have clear thoughts because Mercury is moving forward, we don't have to think as hard. We really can just sit with the feeling and sit with the decision and sit with the two different worlds or the multiple different options that we have, and this crazy thought process that we really once really wanted or made us felt so good and made us felt secure and safe. We don't feel safe anymore. Jupiter and the sun is and Pluto right there. There's no safety net really. So it's either we don't do it and maybe we miss our opportunities in life to have a child if we decide this week in our spiritual pregnancy we want to have an abortion. Like if we choose that this week, then we might have to live with that guilt forever. Or are we reconciling the fact that, we want a child and maybe we can't have one because we don't have the person in our life to do it. So I make the decision to freeze my eggs and take all of the money in my savings and make this. But like this week, we want to just sit with those new world thoughts, because the last few weeks of the Mercury retrograde really made us kind of feel amped to make a new decision. But it's like, wait a second, Chiron now retrograde. Think about that a little harder. Think about the sadness that could come from letting go of what you want to let go of, and even the sadness that could come from step into, and really feel that sadness to its full extent. That is what maturity is. That is what Saturn at 29 degrees is of Capricorn. It is the maturity to really
Heart.
it is anything. Wait a second, do you hear me? Why is this not working? Should I do it in the dark?